My parents said you are a worthless mistake in our past. Get out and never come back. 10 years later, a security officer called and said, Ma'am, your parents are at the gate of your property. My name is Sydney Miller, and that call took me straight back to my 20th birthday. My parents sat me down in the living room and looked me right in the eyes. My mother, Nancy, spoke first. She said those exact words without raising her voice. My father, David, stayed silent and looked away. My brother, Eric, stood there with his arms crossed. They didn't argue a C. They didn't explain. My mother pushed $70 into my hand and pointed to the door. Get out and never come back. The door slammed shut behind me, and just like that, I was gone. I left with only those $70 and their final words still ringing in my ears. That single night changed the entire direction of my life. What started as the worst moment of my existence eventually led me to a place where my parents would one day be standing outside my property gate, asking to see me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The journey from being completely abandoned to where I am today is something nobody expected, especially not the two people who threw me out like trash. If you've ever been called worthless by your own parents and left to figure out life on your own, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This comeback story is one you do not want to miss. The rain started falling harder the moment I stepped off the porch. I stood under the streetlight with nothing but the clothes on my back and those $70 crumpled in my fist. My phone buzzed almost immediately. It was my brother Eric Miller. He didn't even say hello. You really screwed up this time. Sydney, Mom's already telling everyone you're a drug addict who ran away. Good luck finding a job now. I tried to speak, but he cut me off. And don't even think about using the family credit card anymore. I already reported it lost. That account's frozen. He hung up. I stared at the screen. Eric had always been the golden child, the one who got the new car at 16, the college fund, the endless second chances. Now he was the one making sure I had zero safety net. I walked to the nearest bus stop, but the last bus had already left. I kept moving anyway, heading toward the strip mall on the edge of town where the lights were still on. My old job at the coffee shop was only 3 miles away. Maybe they'd let me crash in the back for one night. When I got there, the manager was waiting outside with my final paycheck and a box of my stuff. Sorry, Sydney, your mom called earlier, said you're unreliable and might steal from the register. We can't risk it. She handed me the envelope and closed the door. I opened it right there on the sidewalk. $212 in change. Combined with the $70 from home, I had $282 total. Enough for a cheap motel for maybe 3 nights if I ate nothing but ramen. But the rain turned into a downpour. Cars sped by, splashing water onto my legs. I ducked under an awning and pulled out my phone again. No messages from Dad. Nothing from Mom, just one notification from my bank app account balance, 0. Eric must have drained the joint savings we used for small stuff. I started walking again, this time toward the overpass near the highway. At least it was dry underneath. Halfway there, headlights blinded me. A pickup truck swerved 2 close tires screeching on wet pavement. I jumped back just in time. The driver didn't even slow down. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I sat down on the curb, soaked through, and for the first time that night, I allowed myself to feel how completely alone I was. No home, no job, no family who cared. I looked up at the sky. The storm wasn't letting up. I needed shelter, any shelter. The small business mentoring center in the strip mall was still a few blocks away. I'd passed it hundreds of times. The sign said open late for entrepreneurs and night classes. Maybe someone was still inside. Maybe they'd let me sit in the lobby until morning. I forced myself to stand and keep walking. 1 foot in front of the other. That's all I could do. 3 days later, I pushed open the glass door of the small business mentoring center. The place smelled like fresh coffee and printer ink. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A woman in her mid-50s looked up from behind the reception desk. Her name tag read Linda Wilson, owner. She studied me for a second. I knew I looked rough still wearing the same damp hoodie. Hair tied back messily, but I straightened my shoulders anyway. We're not a shelter, she said, before I could speak. But we do have night classes for people trying to start over. You here for that? I nodded. I need work. Anything. I can clean, answer phones, whatever you need. Linda leaned back in her chair. We run on volunteers and part-timers. The night shift is graveyard 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., $5 above minimum because nobody wants it. You'd lock up, restock supplies, monitor the computer lab. Think you can handle that? Yes, ma'am. She slid a clipboard across the desk. Fill this out. Background check takes a week, but I can put you on informally starting tonight if you're serious about. I filled it out right there. No address to list. I put the mentoring center's street as my current location. Linda didn't comment. When I handed it back, she stood up. Come with me. She led me through a short hallway to a storage room at the back. It was small shelves of office supplies, a folding cot in the corner, a tiny sink and microwave. Oh, this isn't much, she said, but it's dry and secure. You can stay here while you get on your feet. No rent. Just keep the place clean and don't bring trouble. I stared at the cot. Why are you doing this? Linda shrugged. I lost my son to the streets years ago. Didn't help when he needed it. I swore I'd never turn away someone who asked. You asked. I swallowed hard. Thank you. Miss Wilson. Call me Linda when we're alone. Now let's get you set up in the lab. She walked me to the computer room. 10 stations, all running decent machines. One older desktop in the corner had a sticky note for students only. That one's yours for now, Linda said. Internet's unrestricted after hours. There are free coding courses on the bookmarks bar. Start with Python if you're new. I'll check on you at midnight. She left me there with the lights dimmed and the hum of the air conditioner. I sat down and opened the browser. The first tutorial loaded Hello World. I typed the code exactly as shown. The screen printed the words back at me. For the first time in 3 days, I felt something shift. Not hope exactly, but possibility. I kept going. By 2 a.m., I had finished the first module and started the second. My eyes burned, but I didn't stop. Linda came by at 3 with a mug of tea and a protein bar. Don't burn out on night 1, she said. Pace yourself. I thanked her again. She just nodded and went back to her office. When the sun came up, I locked everything, folded the cot blanket neatly, and stepped outside into the morning heat of Las Vegas. I had a job, a place to sleep, access to computers, and an idea was starting to form something about connecting hospitals with faster ambulance routing. Nothing solid yet, just a spark. But it was mine, and nobody could take it away. 6 months later, the mentoring center had become my routine. I worked nights, studied days, and the app idea had grown into lines of actual code. I called it Route Vital software to optimize ambulance dispatch routes using real-time hospital bed availability and traffic data. Nothing fancy yet, just a prototype running on one of the lab computers. One afternoon, Michael Reed walked in. He was in his mid-40s, sharp suit, carrying a tablet. Linda introduced him as one of our occasional mentors, an investor who spots potential early. He shook my hand firmly, Beck. Linda tells me you've been grinding hard on something logistics related. Mind showing me I pulled up the prototype. He scrolled through the interface, asked pointed questions about data sources, error handling, and scalability. I answered as best I could, mostly from online forums and free courses. After 20 minutes, he leaned back. This has legs. Hospitals lose millions every year on inefficient routing. If you can prove it works in a small pilot, I'll put in seed funding. $25,000 to start. In return, I get 10% equity and a board seat. I stared at him. You're serious, dead serious, but you need to get a basic LLC and run a test with one local hospital. I'll help with the paperwork. We spent the next 2 hours mapping out next steps. By the time he left, I had his card and a deadline, 3 months to pilot. I incorporated the next week. Root Vital LLC, Linda let me use the center's address for the filing. The first hospital, small urgent care on the east side, agreed to a 2-week trial after I showed them simulated runs that cut response time by 18%. They gave me access to anonymized dispatch logs. I fed the data in, tweaked the algorithm, and the numbers improved again. Michael wired the money the day the trial ended. Positive feedback from the hospital director. We want to keep using it. Send the contract. I signed my first real client agreement. Revenue started small, $3,000 a month, but it was steady. I moved out of the storage room into a cheap studio apartment nearby. First time paying rent with my own money. Then the letter arrived. It was from the family attorney handling Grandpa's estate. Grandpa had passed 2 years earlier, but the final distribution was only now clearing a savings account I never knew existed, $650,000, earmarked for me as the only grandchild. Except the account balance showed zero. The attorney's note was polite, but clear funds had been withdrawn over the past 18 months. Signatures matched my mother Nancy's. No court approval, no notification to me. I sat on the floor of my new apartment staring at the paper. She had taken every cent. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I called a different attorney, one Michael recommended for business disputes. I explained the situation. He listened, then said, "This is embezzlement from a trust beneficiary. We can file to recover it, but it'll take time. In the meantime, if your family still owns that house on Maple Drive, we can quietly check the mortgage status. If they're behind, you could buy the note. Legal leverage?" I gave him the address. It'll be 2 weeks later, he called back. Mortgage is current, but they refinanced last year. High interest. If payments slip even once, the bank will foreclose fast. We can monitor it. I told him to keep watching. Root Vital was growing, 2 more hospitals signed on. Revenue hit $10,000 a month. Michael introduced me to his network. More funding talks started. But every night I checked the mortgage tracker app the lawyer set up. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning protection. For the future I had built without them. One email arrived unexpectedly from an address I hadn't seen in years. Quinn Harper, old high school friend who used to copy my notes in math class. Subject line, "I owe you this." I opened it on my laptop in the new office space Route Vital had rented downtown. The message was short. "Sydney, I know we lost touch after graduation. I work in accounting now. Your mom and Eric have been spreading news stories saying you hacked company systems and got fired for fraud. They're telling people at church and on local Facebook groups. I saw the posts. Attached screenshots. Thought you should know." There were 6 images attached. Screenshots of comments under a community post about missing persons or runaways. Nancy had written, "Our daughter left suddenly. We're worried she's involved in cybercrime. If anyone hears from her, please let us know." Eric had replied, "She always was good with computers." Too good. Maybe. I scrolled. More replies from people I vaguely remembered. Sympathetic, curious, judgmental. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall for a long minute. Then another notification popped up, LinkedIn message from Tyler Hayes, my ex from 2 years back, the one who said he supported my dreams until he didn't. "Hey, Sid. Long time. Heard about your app thing blowing up? Congrats. I actually tried building something similar last year. Ambulance routing tool. Didn't work out. Code got messy. If you ever want to chat about tech, hit me up." I remembered exactly when he tried. Right after I told him about my early sketches. He asked for my GitHub repo to learn from. I gave it. 2 months later, he ghosted me. Now he was fishing for inside info or a collaboration that would benefit him. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded Quinn's email to my lawyer with one line. "More defamation. Can we add this to the file?" He responded within the hour. "Yes. Strengthens the case. We're still tracking the mortgage. They missed a payment last month. Bank sent notice. Foreclosure clock starts ticking if they miss again." I leaned back in my chair. Root Vital had just closed a new round 3 hospitals expanded contracts. One major chain expressed interest in a multi-state rollout. Revenue cleared $50,000 a month. Michael Reed pushed for hiring developers, sales, admin. I rented a proper office with glass walls and a view of the Strip. I also bought my first condo, 2 bedrooms, downtown, security building. Closing happened quietly, no celebration, just keys in hand and a mortgage I could afford. But the condo purchase wasn't random. It came with a home office big enough for servers and a second monitor. I set up a dedicated folder labeled Family Assets, inside mortgage docs, payment history, lien search results. The house on Maple Drive was now underwater, value dropped after the last market dip. Payments inconsistent. I didn't touch anything yet. I just watched. Quinn emailed again a week later. "They're asking around for your new address. Your mom told people you owe them money. Eric said you stole family heirlooms before you left. I didn't respond, but others might. I thanked her. Told her she didn't owe me anything. She replied, I do. I stood by when they trashed you back then. This is the least I can do. I saved the thread. Meanwhile, whispers reached Michael. See, your family causing issues, he asked over coffee. I kept it brief. Old drama. Handling it legally. He nodded. Good. Focus on the business. We're pitching to a venture group next month. 6-figure round on the table. I nodded back. But every morning I checked the mortgage tracker, right? One more missed payment and the bank would list it. I wasn't rushing. I was waiting. In 2034, the market turned ugly for retail investors. Crypto had crashed again. Real estate stagnated, and high-interest loans finally caught up with people who had overextended. My parents were among them. I learned about it through routine checks, public records, credit reports the lawyer pulled quarterly, etc. Nancy and David had poured their savings into meme coins and speculative property flips during the 2028 boom. When the bubble burst, they lost most of it. Then came the margin calls, the second mortgage on the house, the credit card debt snowballing at 28% APR. David filed for divorce that spring. Court documents showed irreconcilable differences and financial strain. Nancy kept the house. David moved to a 1-bedroom rental across town. Eric stayed with Nancy, but started working odd jobs, sales gigs that barely covered his own bills. Route Vital had become the leading logistics platform for emergency medical transport in the Southwest. We serviced over 80 hospitals across 5 states. Annual revenue crossed $8 million. We had a team of 42 engineers in Phoenix, sales in Denver, ops in Austin. Michael Reed still held his board seat but had stepped back from day to day. I was CEO and majority owner, and I kept the family asset folder updated. The Maple Drive house had fallen into delinquency twice in the past year. Each time Nancy scraped together a late payment, but the lender was impatient. I instructed the lawyer to buy the mortgage note quietly through a shell LLC. It cost $180,000, well below market because the property was distressed. The purchase closed in September 2034. The note transferred to my control. No notification to the borrowers required under the terms. I could call it due at any time or let it ride. I chose to let it ride. Meanwhile, I closed on a new property 5 acres outside Las Vegas. Modern build, gated entry, 24/7 security, solar panels, backup generator, the kind of place that screamed self-made. I moved in quietly, no housewarming, just a change of address for mail and taxes. I changed my phone number again. Blocked all old contacts. Social media profiles were private or non-existent. Eric had tried messaging through LinkedIn, once blocked. Nancy sent a certified letter to the old condo address returned to sender. David never tried. The lawyer updated me monthly. They're struggling. Utilities in arrears. Eric's car repossessed last month. Nancy applied for food assistance but was denied because of asset history. I listened without comment. Route Vital announced a new feature, predictive routing using AI weather integration. Stock price, we went public quietly in 2032, climbed 23% in a quarter. Analysts called it the quiet giant of healthcare logistics. I donated $500,000 anonymously to a women's shelter in Las Vegas. They used it for transitional housing and job training programs. The shelter director sent a thank you note. I framed it in my office. The mortgage note sat in a digital vault. Interest accrued daily. The balance grew slowly but steadily. That I didn't need the house. I needed the option. And the option was mine. The security phone rang at 7 p.m. one evening. I was in the home office reviewing quarterly reports when the intercom panel lit up. Private line from the gate. I picked up. Ms. Miller, this is security. Your parents are at the gate. They're asking to speak with you. Should I let them in or send them away? My pulse didn't spike. It stayed steady. I had known this day would come eventually and put them on the intercom, I said. A moment later, the speaker crackled. My mother's voice came through, first thinner than I remembered, edged with exhaustion. Sydney. Sydney, it's Mom. We need to talk. Please, just open the gate. David's voice followed, quieter, almost pleading. We drove a long way. We're not here to cause trouble. We need help. I leaned back in the chair and pressed the talk button. I can hear you clearly. I said, What do you want? Nancy spoke again, words tumbling out. The house is gone. We lost everything. The bank took it. We're staying with Eric now, but he can't keep supporting us. We have nowhere else to turn. You're doing so well. We saw the news about your company. Please, Sydney, we're family, family. I let the word hang in the air for a second. You told me I was a worthless mistake. I said evenly. You said I was a mistake in your past and to get out and never come back. You handed me $70 and closed the door. Do you remember those exact words? Silence on the other end. Then David's voice, broken. We were angry. We were wrong. We've regretted it every day since. Regret doesn't change facts. I replied, you made your choice 10 years ago and I made mine. I built a life without you. I don't owe you anything. Nancy started crying. We're sorry. We were scared. We thought you'd ruin everything. But look at you now. You're successful. You can help us. Just a little, alone, a place to stay until we get back on our feet. I glanced at the mortgage file open on my second monitor. The note I owned, the balance now sat at $212,000 after missed payments and penalties. I already helped, I said. I bought your mortgage legally. Through proper channels, you're in default. The foreclosure process started last month. More silence. Then Eric's voice cut in. He must have been standing right there. You bought our house. That's sick. Sydney, you're punishing us for one mistake. One mistake I repeated. You reported my credit card lost, so I couldn't even buy food. You spread lies that cost me my first job. You helped them lock me out. And now you call it one mistake, Nancy sobbed louder. We'll pay you back. We promise. Just give us time. I looked at the clock. 7:15. I'm applying the exact amount you gave me that night, $70, toward the first delinquent payment. It's legal. It's documented. Consider it karma. David's voice cracked. Sydney, please, we're begging you. You begged me to stay quiet when I was 18. I said, I did. Now I'm done. I pressed the disconnect button on the intercom. The line went dead. Security called back 30 seconds later. They're still here, ma'am, crying, asking if you'll come out. Tell them to leave the property. I said, if they don't, call local PD for trespassing. I hung up. The house was quiet again. The reports on my screen glowed softly. Route Vital stock had ticked up another 2% that day. I closed the laptop, then I opened a new document and typed one line foreclosure proceedings to proceed as scheduled. I saved it and sent it to the lawyer. No anger, no satisfaction sum, just closure. I turned off the lights in the office and walked to the kitchen. The next morning, the lawyer confirmed the auction date. Public notice went up online and in the local paper. No fanfare, just standard procedure under Nevada foreclosure law. The house on Maple Drive sold in 45 days for $142,000, enough to cover the outstanding balance and leave a small surplus that went straight to the county for taxes. My parents received the eviction notice 2 weeks before the sale. They had 30 days to vacate. They left with what they could fit in Eric's borrowed truck. The realtor's photos showed empty rooms, scuffed floors, and a sold foreclosure sign staked in the yard. They moved into a trailer park on the outskirts of town. Single-wide unit, rent $480 a month plus utilities, no HOA, no security gate, no view. The park had a waiting list for subsidized spots, but they didn't qualify after the asset history from the house sale. Medical bills started arriving, Nancy's blood pressure medication, David's back injury from years ago. No insurance. They applied for Medicaid but were denied because the foreclosure surplus counted as income for the quarter. Eric tried to help, at first paid a few bills, but his own job was unstable. He moved out after 6 months. Last I heard, he was couch surfing with friends in Reno. I never contacted them again. No calls, no letters, no checks. Instead, I signed the deed transfer for the old Maple Drive property to a local children's shelter. Full donation, no strings. They turned it into transitional housing for homeless teens aging out of foster care. The shelter director called personally to thank me. I told her it was the right thing to do. She said they'd name a room after an anonymous donor. I didn't correct her. Root Vital kept growing. We expanded to the Midwest the following year. The company hit 9 figures in valuation. I hired more people, paid better benefits, started a scholarship fund for kids from broken homes who wanted to study tech. I never looked back. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. Respect does. The people who stand by you when you're at your lowest, they're the real ones. The rest, they're just relatives. My parents taught me that the hard way. I learned it, and I moved on. This story is fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real persons or events is coincidental.